There is always a breaking point when a generational superstar is forced to operate under a coaching staff that simply cannot keep up. And when that moment arrives, it is never quiet. It is explosive, it is emotional, and it is impossible to ignore. We have seen this exact story unfold at the highest level of basketball with legends like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan, players whose minds process the game at such an elite level that any restrictive system eventually became a pressure cooker. When a basketball genius is trapped inside a structure built by someone who doesn't fully understand the modern game, the friction doesn't just build, it detonates. And now, that exact explosion has happened in real time for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, and it was all caught on camera. Welcome back to Baseline Pulse. Today, we're breaking down one of the most explosive, controversial, and revealing sideline moments of the entire 2026 WNBA season, the exact instant Caitlin Clark reached her breaking point. The exact moment she looked directly at the Indiana Fever coaching staff, threw the PR script out the window, and made it painfully clear just how fed up she is with what many are now calling outright basketball sabotage. And if you thought empty seats were the biggest issue in Indianapolis, you might want to think again, because what's happening inside that locker room is far more serious. But before we dive deeper into the chaos, we need to understand how we got here, because the context behind this moment makes it even more shocking.
With her coaches, she looks like she's done with their BS and attempt to micromanage everything she does. This coaching staff is not fit to coach a modern style player. Let's watch this. So this is the video. Caitlin Clark is going off, bro.
The stage was set during a strong 89-78 win over the Seattle Storm, a game that, on the surface, looked like a positive step forward. But underneath that final score was something far more revealing. Caitlin Clark didn't just play well, she took control. Completely. She effectively installed her own offensive rhythm right there on the court, dictating pace, creating space, and running the game the way only elite floor generals can. She finished with 21 points and 10 assists, but those numbers don't even capture her full impact. In the first half alone, while Clark was calling the shots and orchestrating the offense her way, the Fever were a plus 11. They weren't just competing, they were dominating. But here's where the situation takes a turn that makes no sense on the surface. According to multiple reports and sources connected to the organization, Stephanie White was not pleased. In fact, she was reportedly furious. Furious while her team was winning. And the reason? It wasn't the result, it was the method. Clark had stepped outside the rigid, slow-paced, micromanaged system that the coaching staff has been forcing all season and replaced it with something faster, freer, and far more effective. She didn't ask for permission. She just did it. And that's the moment everything boiled over, because right after that shift in control, the cameras captured what happened next.
And she kept talking to her, and she's still snapping on her, bro. Snapping on them, bro. Keep that energy, demon. Please delete this. It's going to turn against CC. You new to this? I don't think this should be deleted, bro. I don't. Because we know
the footage doesn't leave room for interpretation. It's raw, it's intense, and it's impossible to spin. Caitlin Clark is seen locked in a heated, highly emotional exchange with the Indiana Fever coaching staff. Her frustration isn't subtle, it's written all over her body language. She's gesturing, explaining, pushing back, standing her ground. This isn't a quick disagreement. This is a full-on confrontation. She doesn't walk away. She doesn't stay quiet. She keeps going, defending her reads, defending her tempo, defending the way she sees the game. And in that moment, she looks completely done. Done with being restricted, done with being second-guessed, done with being forced into a system that clearly isn't maximizing her talent. Now, you already know what's coming next. Certain voices in the mainstream will try to flip this narrative. They'll call it a bad look. They'll say she's being difficult, uncoachable, disrespectful. But let's be honest, if you're an Indiana Fever fan, this might be the most encouraging thing you've seen all season. Because this isn't ego. This is an attitude. This is one of the greatest offensive minds in women's basketball history, refusing to be boxed into a system that doesn't fit. Caitlin Clark sees the game at a different speed. She reads defenses before they even react. And when a coaching staff tries to control every single movement of a player like that, pushing back isn't rebellion, it's necessity.
League game we've seen from Caitlin probably in the 10 months, and her return only needed a couple threes, only 5 shots, led in every one of those categories. What to you seems like the most back or the furthest along maybe in her time back?
I think her burst. I think her burst. I think you can see it not just in taking off with the ball in her hands, but you can see it in the lift of her shot. You can see she looks strong. She looks like loaded in her actions. I think you can tell it by the way she's getting to the free throw line too. So I just think her movement patterns and her burst are back.
And this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It's been building for weeks. We've been watching the tension grow in real time. We've seen Clark benched in the middle of hot streaks. We've seen her historic performances brushed aside in press conferences. We've seen crucial plays drawn up for other players in key moments. And now, we're seeing the emotional toll it's taking. She's frustrated. The fans are frustrated. The entire basketball world is watching this situation unfold and asking the same question: why is a generational talent being held back? The reaction online has been explosive. Comment sections have turned into battlegrounds. Fans are dividing into sides, organizing, and calling out what they believe is a complete mismanagement of the franchise's most valuable asset. And then comes the post-game press conference, where things take another turn. Stephanie White steps up to the podium, fully aware of the growing backlash, fully aware of the empty seats, fully aware of the tension, and suddenly, the tone changes. When asked about Clark's performance, she offers praise. Talks about her burst, her strength, her movement. But listen closely, that praise is carefully chosen. It focuses on physical traits, not decision-making. It avoids acknowledging Clark's control of the offense, her reads, her leadership, because recognizing that would mean admitting something much bigger, that the system might be the problem.
Having 5 people on a string.
What do you like about Lexi and that starting group? And kind of to that end, you've changed your rotation up every single game to some extent. What do you feel like you're still trying to learn with this group this year?
Well, we're 4 games in with a lot of new pieces, so we're trying to figure out what the best combination of players is for the best net outcome. We know we got people that can score, we got some players that can defend, but we've got to have consistency throughout the course of the game. So we're trying to figure that out.
And that's where this entire situation reaches its breaking point. Because what we're really watching isn't just a disagreement, it's a power struggle. On one side, you have a generational superstar trying to win games the way she knows works. On the other, a coaching staff trying to enforce control, structure, and a philosophy that may not fit the talent on the roster. And when those two forces collide, something has to give. The front office now faces a massive decision, one that could define the future of the franchise. Do you stand by a system that's driving away fans, creating tension, and limiting your biggest star? Or do you adapt, evolve, and build around the player who brought life back into your organization? Because make no mistake, this is no longer a small issue. This is a full-blown organizational crossroads. The warning signs are everywhere. The frustration is visible. And that sideline explosion? That wasn't just emotion, it was a message. A message that things cannot continue the way they are. So now the question shifts to you. Was Caitlin Clark justified in that moment? Or does she need to fall in line with the system? And how much longer can this situation continue before something major changes? Drop your take in the comments, because this conversation is only getting louder. If you want real, unfiltered breakdowns like this, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay locked in, because what's happening in Indiana right now isn't just a storyline, it's a turning point. There comes a breaking point in every era of basketball when generational brilliance can no longer coexist with limitation, and what you are witnessing right now with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever is that exact moment unfolding in real time, because history has already shown us this pattern with icons like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan, where elite minds that see the game 5 steps ahead eventually collide with systems that cannot keep up, and when that collision happens, it is never quiet, it is never subtle, It is explosive, it is uncomfortable, and it forces everyone watching to pick a side. And now that same tension has reached its boiling point in the WNBA, because what started as small signs of frustration has now evolved into undeniable, on-camera proof that something is fundamentally broken within this organization, and no amount of PR statements, post-game quotes, or controlled narratives can erase what people just saw with their own eyes: a superstar who is done holding back, done playing safe, and done pretending that everything is fine when it clearly is not. And the reality is this was never just about one game, one play, or one disagreement. This is about philosophy, identity, and control. It is about whether a franchise chooses to empower its most valuable asset or suppress it in favor of outdated structure. And that is why this moment feels bigger than just a sideline argument. It feels like a turning point not just for a team, but for an entire league that is still trying to figure out how to handle a player who is accelerating its growth faster than anyone anticipated. Because when you have someone who can completely dictate pace, manipulate defenses, and generate offense at an elite level, the worst thing you can do is put them in a box. And yet that is exactly what has been happening. And now the consequences are playing out in front of millions, because frustration always finds a way to surface, especially when winning is being compromised. And that is what makes this situation so volatile, because this is no longer a theoretical debate about coaching styles or player development. This is visible, emotional, and very real, and the fans see it, the analysts see it, and most importantly, the player feels it. And once a player reaches that point mentally where they no longer trust the system around them, the clock starts ticking on everything, on relationships, on leadership, and on the future of the franchise itself. Because you cannot build something sustainable on internal conflict, and you definitely cannot maximize greatness while constantly resisting it. So now the pressure shifts upward to the front office, to the decision makers, to the people who ultimately have to decide what direction this team is going to take. Because neutrality is no longer an option, silence is no longer a strategy, and delay only makes the fracture worse. And that is why this moment matters so much, because it forces accountability, it forces clarity, and it forces a choice between control and evolution, between ego and results, between holding on to what was and embracing what clearly is. And whether people want to admit it or not, the future of this franchise, and potentially a major piece of the league's future, is being shaped by how this situation is handled right now, not later, not next season, but right now. Because players like Caitlin Clark do not wait forever. They adapt, they grow, and if necessary, they move beyond anything that tries to hold them back. And that is why this is no longer just content. This is not just another viral clip to debate in comment sections. This is a defining chapter in a much larger story that is still being written. And if you are paying attention, you already know that the next move will be even bigger than what we just saw. So if you want unfiltered breakdowns, real analysis, and the kind of perspective that cuts through the noise and tells you what is actually happening behind the scenes, make sure you lock in, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay connected, because this situation is far from over. The tension is only rising, and the next chapter might change everything.